All right, Drew, we know about the transfer portal. Alabama got hit pretty hard in there. The timing of it obviously was awful. I mean, we could do a whole show about that alone. But big picture, where do you think their roster is where or close to where it needs to be? Where are the big holes that need to be patched? And maybe the more important question with that, how much of a chance do you think they'll have to make those deficiencies right once everything is settled heading into next season?
Well, I think the two biggest questions, Chris, after we saw the NFL departures and the portal departures, are offensively at the offensive tackle
Yep.
spot because, Kadyn Proctor was homesick. I'll be honest with you. Here's another story. He almost didn't come back to the Rose Bowl, okay, against Michigan. He tore ligaments in his ankle during bowl prep and was hurt and then went home to see his parents, and he didn't want to come back. And so they had to sweeten the pot NIL wise and really give it and really sit down and talk with him about, we'll take care of you, but we're not going to let you get further injured. You can still play on this thing. They were going to Jeff Allen, who's also being retained by Kalen DeBoer, best guy in college football when it comes to director of sports medicine and taking care of the players. They reassured him he was going to be okay. And I'll never forget after the game, he talked about how proud of himself he was that he played through that. So they got Kadyn Proctor back, but his heart was just he wanted to go back home. He's an Iowan, and so he went back to Iowa. I thought he had a good freshman year. I thought he had potential to be a great player and a first-round draft choice, but that's going to be somewhere else. They lost him, and so that's a huge loss, and they lost J.C. Latham to the NFL. So they've got to find two tackles. Now, they lost Seth McLaughlin to Ohio State, and he had snap issues, but I don't think that was all on him. But then I think they at least got a guy of equal talent, maybe a better player in Parker Brailsford, and he's a younger player. I mean, he has 3 years of eligibility potentially left, as he was a redshirt freshman and was second team All Pac-12 for Washington. So I think they did that. Already shows his chops in the portal. Now I know it was one of his players at Washington, but still they went and got him to take the place of Seth McLaughlin. But now they have to decide, is Elijah Pritchett, and he's had some off-field issues too, is he good enough to play tackle in this system? And another thing, Alabama had a big offensive line. It was how played out it was. It's bigger than most NFL ones this year. And at times they struggled. Well, with this system, I think they're going to want smaller, quicker linemen. So that's what's going to be fascinating to me. Especially at the tackle spot. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw some of these guys drop in weight to get quicker for what they want to do in this offense. And so you'll have Elijah Pritchett, and you'll have 3 freshmen: Miles McVay, Wilkin Formby. I know they really like Formby a lot. We'll see. All these guys redshirted, and so we'll see. How these guys kind of perform at the offensive tackle spot, because none of them played much. And then a lot of them were redshirting and trying to develop, but and then they brought in Bertrand from Texas A&M as well. So they're going to have those 3 guys coming in, and we'll see how they compete. To me, what they're probably going to do is they're going to take a long look at all these guys in spring practice, and then when they'll see where they are from the right and the left tackle spots, and if they like where they are, then they may stand pat. But I wouldn't be surprised, because I don't think there's anybody out there right now in the portal that they're going to snag. But I think maybe after spring practice, I wouldn't be surprised. We saw it a couple years ago. Alabama brought in Tyler Steen from Vanderbilt,
Yep.
you're very familiar with, who started at left tackle for a year, now with the Philadelphia Eagles. So I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama adds to that tackle room, in some form or fashion after spring. But I think that spot, and then the defensive backfield, I mean, they got decimated. I mean, and really, Trey Amos left to go to Ole Miss. He probably would have started at one of the corner spots or had a great chance to. And then the only truly great player they lost was Caleb Downs. He's the one irreplaceable dude. First freshman All-American, 107 tackles, 2 picks, punt return touchdown. That was really disappointing. But I'll just be honest, the only way he would have stayed, I think, is if Nick Saban kept coaching. And once he went out the door, because a lot of these guys, Nye Black, Isaiah Bond, I think they replaced Bond with Jeremy Bernard, the slot receiver from Washington. I think he'll replace him. And with Nye Black, they brought in a true freshman, Caleb Odom. who's extremely talented. But a lot of these guys that went out the door, the disappointing thing is, but this just shows you the portal era, they didn't even return calls or communicate with DeBoer. They wanted out.
Wow.
They were just there for Nick Saban, and sometimes that's what happens. And but I will say, I still think their roster's in a very strong spot if the attrition stops now. And so for the last week plus week and a half, 2 weeks, we haven't heard too much. And I would think they're going to settle in and go through spring. But if they can earn the trust and win these players over, as I'm hearing they are, and then add a few more pieces to this team, then I think they can be in strong shape because they're going to need to probably add another piece or two on the defensive backfield, because one of the things they did, though, that was huge is they signed a really deep and good defensive backfield class. They signed 7, 1 left, so they've got 6. But they have 3 5-star level guys, Peyton Woodyard, Zabian Brown, and Zay Mincy, and they've convinced all of them so far to stay. And even though freshmen, they're going to get reps. They need to get work. And so you're going to have – and then a guy like Devontae Smith, not that Devontae Smith. They have one that was hurt last year that'll be back, that has a chance to – he said he's coming back to play safety because they lost a ton in that – they lost, first-round picks, in my opinion, in Terrion Arnold and of course, Kool-Aid McKinstry. But then they lost a lot of depth. So they're going to have to me, they're going to have to add probably – I wouldn't be surprised if they added a piece at the offensive tackle spot, and then if they add some pieces, a piece or two in the secondary. I know they wanted Jabbar Muhammad, the corner from Washington, but let's just be honest. He wanted too much money, either from Texas, Washington, or Oregon. Oregon gave him what he wanted. Alabama was not willing to go there for a 1-year guy. So now they were able to go there for Ryan Williams, and that's when I'll bring him into the conversation. This was – I remember 17 years ago, Nick Saban's watershed moment was that 2008 recruiting class, and he got Julio Jones. And Julio Jones was the best player in the state, was probably a top 5 player overall. Alabama had been bad. Remember his first year they were 7-6. They weren't very good. But Julio was wanted by everybody, and Julio set the tone for that class and then for really his entire run with the way he handled himself and what he did for the program. And this kid, Ryan Williams, to me, he made history yesterday. Became the first player ever in the history of the state to win Mr. Football twice. And when you think about it, it's even more remarkable because, Chris, he doesn't turn 17 till February the 9th. He's 16.
My.
He won. He was the first sophomore to ever win Mr. Football last year. And then as a junior, he wins it again. They won the state championship. First time Saraland's ever done that over in the Mobile area as a sophomore. They lost in the state finals to his good friend Jalen Mbakwe and Clay Chalkville this year. But he is an electric talent. And, I've been around Alabama football my whole life, and I've watched him on film. Never had a chance to see him live. I hate that I didn't, but in high school. But I'll just tell you this. To me, watching him on tape, I've called him magic. And I just think he is. I think he's a cross between Jalen Waddle and David Palmer. That's what I think. And David Palmer still for me, and a lot of the younger people that watch
I remember him
around, they've only seen YouTube. It doesn't do it justice. I was blessed.
Versatile.
That guy. I was in high school when he was at Alabama, so I saw his entire career. He is pound for pound the greatest playmaker I've ever seen put on an Alabama football uniform. And this guy, Ryan Williams, if he can be close to that, he will have a chance to do remarkable things and help Kalen DeBoer's era get off to a great start. He's also going to wear the number 2, which I think, even though he wasn't alive when Palmer was playing, I think he's probably been shown the highlights. He's been told about the deuce, and he can be this generation's David Palmer. David Palmer, I mean, no disrespect to Javier Arenas, who's still one of my favorites, and Javi was a great punt returner. There has never been a punt returner like David Palmer. And I mean, I know this was before Coach Saban retired. Deuce is about to go into the State Hall of Fame, which is a tremendous honor for him. I was talking to his former teammate, George Teague, who is still very well connected to the program and who played with David. And I joked with George. I said, well, George, I get some young people telling me that David couldn't play today, which shocks me. In this era of wide open, football, getting guys out in space, he looked at me, he goes, how would they tackle him? He goes, we couldn't. And we had one of the greatest defenses ever. he told me a funny story. He said one year for his birthday, the defense made up their mind that they were going to give him a birthday whipping, and we were going to tackle him. He goes, and we couldn't tackle him. He said he's just so unique, and so that's what Ryan Williams is. And I know, see, the mantra was in the aftermath of him getting hired for the first couple of days was, well, he's from the West Coast, but Kalen DeBoer made a great point to all of us in the media room. He said, look, everybody's saying I'm from the West Coast. I'm from South Dakota. He goes, I've only been out on the West Coast when I went to Fresno and Washington. He said, so I've been out there, but only for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
I went to college in South Dakota and in high school. He goes, I'm from that area of the country. So the thing is, Nick Saban didn't have any ties to the South when he came over from Michigan State to LSU, but he knew how to win. And this guy knows how to win too. It's not about that. I know Harsin was a bad fit at Auburn, but that doesn't mean this guy's going to be a bad fit at Alabama. I think he knows exactly what to do. And I think getting Ryan Williams, because I'm telling you, I thought when Nick Saban was still coaching, even if T-Rob left, I was like, and T-Rob was closely, was very close to Ryan Williams and his dad. And that's why I thought T-Rob would be retained, because he would be a key, along with Nick Saban, of keeping Ryan Williams in Tuscaloosa. I thought the whole time Ryan Williams was going to flirt with Auburn and Texas and these other schools, but still sign with Alabama until Saban retired. And then I was like, man, he may very well end up at Auburn. But the first really good sign with Kalen DeBoer was right after he got hired, he had a team meeting about a day later. And Ryan Williams, on his own dime, was at the team meeting. And when you found out he was at the team meeting, he never went on the midweek visit to LSU. And then he came on the visit to Alabama, and everything was going – from the people you're talking to that would know, I mean, it was hit out of the park. And then he cancels the Texas visit. And then he cancels the Auburn visit and recommits. To me, that was huge, and it just showed that he can recruit and he can connect with a kid like that, who, to me, could have gone anywhere in America once he reclassified. Chris, I mean, this is a kid that's good enough. He's a top 10 national player, and to me, you had to have him, especially with the way he fits your offense, to set the tone for recruiting, to keep this class together, and then going into 2025.